Welcome back, everyone, to today's Love Breakthrough Virtual Retreat. And our very special guest expert today is someone who has a lot of experience utilizing beautiful feminine energy in order for us to attract our soulmate. We're going to talk about archetypes and all things that are going to be amazing takeaways for you at the end of this call, and a beautiful activation as well. Let me introduce Anya to you. She's a feminine energy guide and healer, and she's been working with women all over the world, from South Africa, Norway, Thailand, Hong Kong, Australia, and UK. She's the founder of the Elevated Woman, and that's an online platform where she hosts a range of beautiful programs, teachings, and trainings from a sacred lineage of divine feminine wisdom. Welcome, Anya.
Thank you so much. I love being here with you.
I would love to hear what makes the kind of work that you do unique.
So where I come from, the wisdom, the teachings that I've studied for the last 10 years with my mentor, Shannon Port, there's obviously a lot of people talking about feminine energy and the divine feminine. Now it's pretty much any female coach talking about empowerment uses that language at this point. But 10 years ago, when I found my mentor and her teachings and studied the divine feminine wisdom, the thing that is different is there's different frequencies. I mean, we all know that, like, there's different frequencies. It can be the same thing, but if you actually feel into the energy behind it, it's a different tone, a different frequency. And so that's one of the things that I really value in the work that I do with clients and in my trainings for Elevated Women, is consistently coming to that intention of holding purity and holding the intention of really letting the teachings come from the highest energies of love and light, the absolute purest, because we can use these words, but sometimes, it's not actually honoring the actual essence of the goddess, for example, or the divine feminine.
And I know all of the ladies watching are really eager to hear how this relates to manifesting a soulmate, attracting in an ideal match, how we can use this feminine wisdom. And specifically today, we're going to talk about archetypes. Tell us a bit about what feminine archetypes are.
The feminine activation trainings were the first set of trainings I ever did live inside of Elevated Woman. And it's like still my favorite core trainings that we have. In those trainings, there's 3 levels, and there are 6 archetypes. So the maiden, the queen, the goddess, the princess, the high priestess, and the seductress. So those are the main 6 archetypes that I originally worked with in my own personal practice, as well as with clients. Obviously, they're not archetypes that I made up. We've worked with these archetypes our whole lives. As little girls, we worked with these archetypes when we dressed like princesses, and we put our tiaras on and our high heels. So we are working with different feminine energies way back then. We knew what to do, and what happens is, through our society conditioning, through our family conditioning, there's different, so the archetypes hold the full spectrum of divine feminine energy. They're themselves like wisdom keepers, and they hold the codes for the divine feminine frequencies. So for example, the queen holds and teaches the energies of elegance, nobility, leadership. I want to say the word containment is coming to me, whereas the princess teaches us some of the energies of love and joy, kindness, warmth, generosity, fun, flirty, but she also teaches grace. And what's so powerful is that when we work with these archetypes, we learn there's so many different facets to them. And we may think that, you might think of the goddess and think of the goddess, and you think of like who she is and how you describe a goddess to be. But the more we work with the archetypes, they actually show us the parts of ourself that we are ready to heal and reintegrate. Yeah, they hold the codes, the divine feminine codes. They hold the frequencies. And for most people, we have a handful of our feminine energy is stuck or suppressed due to that conditioning from family, society. So some people might feel really comfortable in their feminine, in their seductress energy and their princess energy, but when it comes to the maiden, they're like, no, I don't know what she's about, I don't want to. They just have that feeling. But that's where that individual's healing lies, is actually in working with the archetype of the maiden and figuring out, okay, this energy of innocence and raw vulnerability, trust, openness, that is where I have blocks, and that's where I'm ready to, to do some healing work. So
fascinating. Okay, we're going to unpack this a little bit more, but let's continue to run through, because you've shared a little bit with us about what the queen and the princess are like. Can we touch on the other archetypes as well?
Yeah, I would love to. Okay, so I'll go in order of the archetypes as I teach them in those trainings. And the reason I created the specific order for a reason, and I'll explain as we go. So the goddess is first in the training series, and she really represents the wild. So wild, untamed. Think of the ocean, free. The ocean does not care. The ocean's not afraid of being too loud or being too big. The ocean is simply a force to be reckoned with. So a woman who's connected to her goddess energy is not afraid of her emotions. She's labeled herself emotional and doesn't have any shame about it. Or maybe she does, because not everyone has comfort with emotions. However, they're so normal for her. It's just like she's embraced them. So yeah, I'm trying not to go too far into it, but that's some goddess energy right there. A woman who would be blocked in the goddess energy maybe would be like, is not as comfortable expressing her emotions with others. Maybe does not, like, I want to say, like, dresses very conservatively every single day. And I think that's great. I think we've entered an era where we should dress a little bit more conservatively, because it's gone so far in the opposite direction. But I'm talking more about, like, it's the same way every single day. So that, like, simplicity, the goddess is the opposite of simplicity. She's complexity. She's out of the box. So even that might be really uncomfortable for some women and very, very normal for others. So again, it's not about, you're not a fixed thing. You're not a fixed energy. That's the entire point of working with the archetypes. Feminine energy in itself is dynamic, and that's what the goddess represents. So that's why I always start with her, because she teaches us really the essence of what the archetypes do, which is awaken that dynamic, multidimensional, shape-shifting feminine energy. Number 2 is the queen. So what I did in that training was I paired archetypes that were contrasting. So the goddess and the queen contrast, and yet they're equal power. They're just different feminine power. They're different feminine frequencies. So the queen, like we talked about, noble, refined, she holds a lot of responsibility. She wears the crown. The king and the queen sit there and work together, but the crown really symbolizes this connection to the divine. So the spokes, I don't know what they're called, but they reach up to the divine, and then that opening. So the queen and the king, they're also elevated on the throne. So their job is to connect to a higher council, really, the divine council, and then lead the kingdom from that. And I'm sharing that because when we step into our power as women, if we really want to hold divine feminine power, which the byproduct of divine feminine power is confidence. The byproduct of divine feminine power is magnetism. The byproduct is it's alignment in every area of your life, because when you're really connected to the divine, you cannot let things slide. If something's not in alignment in your life, or you're out of integrity, your spiritual path will require you to get that right and to clean that part of your life up. So there's a lot of people learning about feminine energy, but then there's a whole other realm of feminine energy. And I would say the queen teaches us that. So it's very sacred, and she holds a lot of power. She teaches us how much our feminine power comes from our spiritual connection. So you'll also experience me through this interview, probably in so many different energies, especially as I talk about them, because I'm working with those different archetypes. So you'll experience those energies coming through. And so
I'd love to ask, what would be an example? It doesn't have to be in a relationship necessarily, but what would be an example of a change, perhaps a behavioral change or something that we would notice differently about ourselves if we were more embodied in this queen archetype?
there's also wounded sides of each archetype. The wounded side of the queen is she's like the controlling mom who doesn't really take care of herself, um, is actually more in her masculine energy, like giving people orders and nitpicking at her husband. The elevated side of the queen, the elevated archetype, the true archetype. So how that would look like in relationship if she's showing up, kind of a lot of silence, a lot of taking in the information, digesting it, processing it, connecting to the council, and articulating the truth, articulating what is needed, what is required. So I do lots of different trainings, but another thing I talk about is the difference between standards and requirements. And standards are something that are externalized. We place them on someone else. Like, I want someone who does this XYZ. A requirement is, I literally require this, and it has nothing to do with you. It's not personal, but I know myself very well. And in order to be in a relationship with me, I require these things because this is what makes me thrive. This is what allows me to live the life I'm committed to living. It has nothing to do with you. So that's very queen. She's not codependent. She's sovereign. And she invites people into her world, into her kingdom. She's down to collaborate and create together, but it's never going to be compromising to her or her people, or her body, her spirit, her heart.
I think there's also a lot of women who really relate to this, feeling like we're bringing a little bit too much of our masculine into a relationship and feeling the need to organize things and plan and control. And so I love that you talked about the shadow side. Which is the third archetype we're going to talk about?
The maiden. So
Okay.
again, contrasting to the queen, when I do the maiden activation in that training, it takes place in the forest, and her home is the forest. So she wakes up and she's on the forest floor, but she's so safe and protected. Like, this is a spiritual land, and nothing on this land is lower than the highest divine frequency. So all the animals, the earth itself, the trees, her body, it's the essence of purity. And that, because it's the essence of purity, it's the essence of truth. So pure truth, raw, open, receptive, vulnerable. These are all frequencies. These are divine feminine frequencies. And the maiden teaches us these frequencies. So again, when we work with the archetype, and what's so powerful about doing activations actually is you're not just learning about them, you're awakening the energies in your body. You're having a visceral, experiential feeling of them. That's the intention behind the activations, because you're not really in your feminine energy if you're having to think about it. We want to get people into their bodies where they don't have to think about it. I just took a dance class, and I've been working with this teacher for a while on some of like the rhythm and the steps. And he was like, you're actually stepping on beat, because the footwork's kind of hard. And so there's a lot that goes into it, but I've been stepping, he was like, you're stepping to the beat with the proper footwork and timing. Are you thinking about that? Or are you just doing it? I'm like, I think I'm honestly just doing it finally. So that's what is possible for whoever's listening. If you feel like you're disconnected from your feminine energy and you're so in your head about it, really, no woman that has ever come to me and felt and been afraid that she's like too masculine and not feminine enough is actually not feminine enough. We are very feminine, all of us. So it's just awakening those dormant frequencies and letting them shine through.
As far as a relationship goes, a beautiful conscious partnership. What does this maiden archetype really bring to that relationship, or even as a single woman dating and looking to co-create?
Okay, I think this is going to be my favorite question that you asked the whole time. My favorite response, like my favorite thing that we talk about. I have the chills because, and I feel emotion behind this one. So, what I used to think was that we should always bring the maiden. We should always bring that trusting, open, vulnerable heart and body to the table. And I always believed that if I led with that trust, that I would be rewarded. And I still believe that. But I have also learned that in another aspect of the maiden is she actually is very delicate. I wanted to say fragile, but she's delicate. And a petal can be just, flower can be destroyed if it's not tended to properly. And when we share our heart again and again, and we share that vulnerability again and again, we can feel like we've been destroyed again and again. And that's what I find, how that shows up in women and my clients, and I've experienced in myself, could be so many different things, from adrenal fatigue to autoimmune issues to PCOS to some serious problems. I see a laser therapist here in town, and she does like light therapy on me, and it's so powerful. And she does like muscle testing. One of the things that she tests for is emotions. And she just told me recently, she's like, what I've learned is every single session with every single client, I test for emotions, because emotions are really behind the stress. And so what I want to say with this is, when we really connect with the maiden, what shifts in our behavior to the outside world, and especially with men, is a healthy relationship with the maiden is not sharing that essence just with anyone. It's being incredibly cautious, incredibly protective, and careful about who gets access to that energy. Not from a non-trusting place, but it's from such a deep level of self-love that you know that nothing that is not actually going to be able to handle and take care of your true essence can be allowed in, because you are that sacred, you are that precious, you are that tender, and you are that vulnerable, really. And it's okay to protect yourself. It's not bad. So,
For those women that don't identify as much with this maiden energy, why might that be beautiful for them to bring more of that to their relationships?
well, sometimes the reason we don't identify with the maiden is maybe as a kid, like us bringing our raw, vulnerable self forward was really, really not safe, or it was exploited, maybe even sexual abuse or emotional abuse, because our emotions are sensual, their feelings and their intimacy. So there's a lot of ways that vulnerability can be exploited. And that's actually the biggest thing that Elevated Woman is here to do, is to, what we stand for as a tribe, as a community, and as a movement, is we stand against a world that exploits human vulnerability. We stand for a world that protects it. So, and vulnerability is the essence of the feminine. It's one of her aspects, one of the many aspects of the divine feminine. So,
what's the next archetype?
the next archetype is the princess. She's not too far off from the maiden. They're both very soft. You could use the word soft for both of them. Soft is another frequency of the maiden. But the princess she teaches us joy. She teaches us fun, flirting. I talked a little bit about it before. I think of the color pink, but I want you to think of the princess, like imagine her in a ballroom. My favorite thing that came out of that training was when I said, my kitty's right here, that the princess that the princess has never been in a reality where she was not loved and protected. And the word worthy is not even in her vocabulary, because why would it need to be? There's no contrast to it. There's no opposite of worthy for her in her experience. She only knows worthy. So she there's a power in working with this archetype who has been absolutely adored and cherished her entire life, absolutely protected, um, absolutely babied and, called the little princess, and was really able to be a little girl. She was actually, I call it like your moon sign, your rising sign, and your sun sign. She was my moon sign, my moon archetype, the one that was the hardest for me because I really was raised in a culture where you should not be very girly. Princess was not, it was more like toughen up. So and I was very resistant to the girls who wanted to be the center of attention. Because I was never allowed to be that. So again, that's an example of how when we work with the archetypes, we unlock these old memories of, oh, that was allowed and encouraged, and this was absolutely not. you know? So the princess actually became my favorite archetype of all of them. She holds so much magic and power, and we don't even associate that with her. But the leadership that she holds, like the power to influence a room through feminine energy is what the princess teaches us. Kindness, warmth, smile, generosity, this warmth of spirit. Just like I have chills thinking about her. She really has a kind heart. So, and that's a byproduct of being loved and adored and cherished. And so we learn from her that we only allow that. We allow that for ourselves, and we require that from the world around us, because we commit to being her in the world. It's like, okay, how do I show up as the princess? Well, if I want to be loving, generous, warm, kind, how must I feel about myself and treat myself? And what kind of treatment must I be experiencing from the people around me as well? So all of these archetypes help us elevate, our boundaries and what we expect, which is a good thing.
Have you noticed if there's any correlation with the princess archetype specifically, but a woman's relationship with her father or her primary masculine?
Yeah, she's so complex because she also has a fallen side of her, and there is such thing as being too babied and too protected and kind of like spoiled and not growing up feeling that personal confidence to like, a divine feminine princess is being prepped to be the queen. So if you think of a princess and she just gets to play for her whole life, no. The real princess energy is being prepped to be a queen. So I think that we can definitely see, like, there's some wounded princess energy of women that I've worked with or like clients where it's like their personal struggle is that lack of desire to own some of that personal integrity and like, I can do this in the world.
I love that we're going to be also sharing something that will help everyone listening to also understand their archetypes as well. We'll get to that in a minute though, because I'd love to hear more about the high priestess and then the seductress. Is that the order or the other way around?
Yes, no, you're absolutely correct. So the high priestess, she also very much teaches us that our power as women comes from our spiritual connection. She is the bridge between the spiritual and the material, the non-matter and matter. So her activation takes place at the very top of a mountain, and in like the cloud, like in that very high altitude, where the frequencies are very fluid. It's, if you think of like matter, the hardest things in your room right now, wherever you are, like the hardest things around you, the table, the walls, it's contracted energy and it's the most compact. So it's still energy, atoms and molecules, but there's not a lot of there's not a lot of movement. There's still movement, this subtle vibration. Whereas we move into that non-matter place, the non-material place, the energy moves so openly. So she is like this bridge between the two worlds of spirit and earth. She represents this power that we hold as women to literally bring life to earth, to form a baby in our body, to birth that nothingness into something onto this earth. So we are the carriers of that spirit. She's my rising archetype. So your sun archetype is the one you feel most comfortable with and natural in. That was the goddess for me. Your rising is the one that you aspire to, that you want to be like, or that you are in your highest self, and your destiny is to like master her frequencies. And then your moon is the one that you are resistant to. And so the priestess, I'll just say just a few of her frequencies. Also pure, wise, all seeing, all feeling. So she is able to connect. She's like the essence of the consciousness. She's connected to the consciousness of everything. She's connected to like a bird that is far, far, far from her, because she feels and she's that connected. And she's very much connected to the oneness of all.
Ironically, I actually have the most connection to this archetype. And so I would love to ask you if anything is coming through about what the fallen side of this archetype is, or what the shadow side in a relationship might look like, some things to look out for.
Well, this is good, because I think that some of the fallen, the goddess and the high priestess are actually pretty connected. And so we'll kind of touch into some of the goddess fallen frequencies as well. Well, one thing is just being so in the infinite realms, it's harder to be on the material and the matter realms, which I think when you're in a relationship and you own that your superpower is in that non-material realm, and you're with a partner that embraces and honors that and supports on the material realm, that can be very balancing. My mentor said to me once, she was like, I went through kind of a long, hard relationship a while ago, and she was like, you both are receivers. You know, there's rocks, and then there's receivers. And when two receivers are in a relationship, you're both tuned into like all this energetic information, but no one's grounding it. But when a rock and a receiver come together, you get to be the receiver, and you get to be next to a rock who maybe is not as sensitive, maybe doesn't feel as much, but that's very anchoring and grounding for you. That's just something to be aware of. It's less about like trying to change yourself, but more being communicative and deciding, do I want to foster this natural innate way of my being? Then I need to have requirements where my partner knows that this is how I am. I don't want to change it. And they're prepared to set me up for success. That's more of what I would suggest than trying to change yourself so much. Like the pitfall that most women are making is blaming themselves so much and trying to change themselves instead of owning themselves and showing up into relationships with men, claiming this is who I am, this is what I want, this is what I require. If you want that or don't want that, that is not personal to either of us. So I don't really care, but let's get clear on this before we enter into a relationship. So it's more about that claiming. I'll talk briefly on the goddess too. So I went through a phase where I kind of got rid of all of my goddess dresses. And I was surprised at myself for doing that. The reason for this was, and I still teach yoga, but I have been in so many different communities. If you do human design, like I have an open G center. So if you have an open G, you know what it's like to put on different identities and try them on and know them very well. I have that myself. So I came from more spiritual world, where around people who were, meeting for just all the spiritual things, whether it was like I was never really into psychedelics, but psychedelics are a good example of like taken in the wrong way, taken too far. It's very fallen goddess energy. And you're exposing the divine feminine to be like merged with who knows what frequencies. And to say that that does not affect us it's not accurate. It's immature. It's not responsible. It's very damaging. I think that it's just being aware of like your containment. I think one of the fallen things that both the high priestess and the goddess can show up in relationships is that open sexual energy. My mentor Shannon Port taught this as open amorous. It's openly amorous. So it's like you may be in a committed relationship, but your sexual energy is saying otherwise. So like shooting your sexual energy out, just being like that very open, magnetic sexual force. That's actually coming from a wounded place, and I could go into that, but fear of abandonment, fear of being alone. Um, yeah, lots of different reasons that we can go into those fallen energies. Does that answer the question?
Which there's a beautiful side of really being in that, and we're going to talk about this now, the seductress energy, right?
We may think that the seductress is all about like what we wear, how we look, and that's an aspect because it's one of the senses. But seduction is about sensory. It's about activating the feelings of someone else and overwhelming them. So we work with the voice, we work with the way we look, we work with our scent, and that means health. Like, are you eating like, yeah, like your actual natural scent, not just like perfumes and stuff. Pheromones, naturally, it's working with your energy fields. And I would say that's the biggest one where women are not in their seductive energy, is when we are putting men on the pedestal. And we may think we have a lot going on in our lives. And I'm saying this because I was doing all the right things for a long time of being busy and not thinking, trying not to think about men. And yet I'd find myself obsessing over a guy in a situationship and losing myself again and again. And it really, really took, the thing that finally broke that pattern for me was actually facing moments of aloneness, that aching, scary feeling when you're like, I'm home alone and I don't have a date tonight. I don't have a guy coming over tonight. The guy that I want is not texting me back. My friends are busy. I feel achingly alone. And it's diving into that feeling of ache and aloneness and sitting with all the pain that comes up as many times as you can find that feeling and seek it out and sit with it until it feels peaceful to you and it's not so scary. You will be set up for success with the seductress. The power of the seductress is the ability she is the essence of self-absorbed. Her focus is on her and her pleasure. And she knows that when it's on her pleasure, everyone around her, family, her kids, are going to thrive. If she is not in her pleasure, if she's not in her alignment and not feeling good, because feeling good is a marker of alignment or misalignment if you don't feel good. So when your life is feeling good, you are naturally seductive. If it's not so much. So that self-absorption will bring your attention into you and your life. You have to face those fears though. That's the biggest thing I share right now with my clients, is like, you really, if you need to not think about the guy and not text him, but you're forcing yourself to, might as well just text him. That's still a waste you're still exhausting yourself and your energy is being drained. It's going to be the moment that you sit in all that discomfort that's coming up in your body and alchemize it. That's when you really gain this like final layer of feminine power, where a guy's not treating you right, not respecting you. You simply walk away in silence and there's no charge to it. And it doesn't mean that you're walking away forever, but you're walking away so he comes to you in a different behavior and different dynamic. So it's this knowledge that I don't want to say you're the prize because I'm so over that saying, but you're on the pedestal and you're the one actually making the moves and directing the relationship. He's not, because most of the time guys don't know how to direct the relationship, and you're not going to be enjoying that experience. So you're actually leading it via your presence or your absence. your affirmation, your attention is validating to a guy. So if you're giving your attention to a guy who's not showing up, taking you on dates, recognize that it is a very imbalanced equation here. It's not equal. Even if he's texting you back, it's not 50-50 effort. You're giving 80%, he's getting all of that. Like, your energy and attention is feminine energy and valuable. So he's just like soaking that up, turning around, using that to build his life. And what are you getting? Nothing, just like wasted energy. So we're passionate about that. Yeah. So I could go on, but I'm pausing.
I'd love to zoom in. I know that I could talk to you for so long, but I know that we have a limited time today. And I'd love to sort of really like zoom into today, what you're seeing like right now with your clients, some of the challenges and experiences they're facing in their journey to finding their soulmate. And what would you like perhaps in the context of archetypes, what would you like to share with the ladies? What's on your heart that you feel women really need to know to help navigate?
Feminine energy teachings that are teaching women how to be more feminine to please a man, I'm not into them. I used to teach that a little bit, more because it was like the marketing was the only thing that got people to listen. But what I realized after being in this scene for 5+ years now is that there's been a very, very negative impact that's made on a lot of women, which is this hyper concern that they're doing something wrong or they're not feminine enough. And if they were just a little bit more feminine, then their husband or their boyfriend would act right. And it is the opposite teaching we need to look at. You are in your feminine energy when you step away and you can be in solitude and you can be alone. And in order to have access to you, it has to honor you. It has to work for you. You're not bending yourself backward to try to like be magnetic and get him to chase you. That's draining your energy. And I'm sure if you're resonating with this, you know what I'm talking about, then you know how drained you might feel. So think about feminine energy and a woman who is full and overflowing and abundant. She has a lot of it because she doesn't have a lot of energy leaks. So the world of dating right now is full of energy leaks. And it doesn't matter what the world of dating is doing, because you can be someone who lives a life of such integrity and refinement where you don't allow energy leaks. So you don't allow a guy to not be consistent or like wishy-washy or flaky. Like that just literally is so far from what you would allow that it can show up in your life and you're like, that's so unattractive. And you may be the hottest guy I've ever seen, but like that is like so unattractive, that behavior. And there's no charge to that. You're just kind of like, yeah, no. And it really is a real thing where the only options that come around you are going to be ones that allow you to stay in that integrity. So it's not about what you attract, it's about what you allow. And I love that, because some of the spiritual teachings will say like, well, if you just do all these things, like, you know, you're attracting that because you still are like an energetic match for it. I think we can honestly, we're always an energetic. The only thing that makes us not an energetic match is when that thing comes into our life and we, with no second thoughts or apprehension, just say no to it automatically. It's like that same thing of when my body was, you know, I was doing those steps automatically. It's like that guy comes in offering a situationship and you don't even think twice. It's just like your automatic response is no. That's it. So I think that's what I would, and you know, I am currently encouraging my clients to get into, is just and also just take the men off the pedestal and put yourself on it. That's the biggest thing. They will literally bend over backwards for us, but we have to put ourselves properly where we are meant to be.
On a very simple scale, to illustrate the point that you mentioned about it's what we allow rather than what we attract. And I often hear, you know, women complain, not often, but sometimes hear them complain about how a DM conversation with someone on a dating app turns sexual and it's creepy and it's gross. And why do I always attract guys that are creepy and become sexual like that? And the reality is they're all on our apps. We all have access to these men. It is just how much energy we're giving them in return and how much space we're allowing that person in to get to the point where it becomes creepy, right?
Yes. And the moment where it doesn't trigger you anymore, that that is happening, is the moment that you will stop noticing it. That's the thing. We notice it. And that and honestly, things do stop coming into your field. Like I haven't had I like that was not a part of my dating, like I don't get creepy guys in my life ever because I don't take it personally anymore. I'm like, it's not a reflection of me or my beauty or my worth. I'm just like, yeah, it's, so when you stop being triggered by the things that are triggering you right now about these guys, they really won't come into your field. So so the answer to why do I keep attracting these guys is because you are still triggered by it. Why is it triggering to you? What are you making it mean about yourself? If you can figure out what you get, and when you answer that question, you'll find this list of beliefs about, well, it means I'm not worthy of the kind of man I do want. It means that I'm not pretty enough. It means that, like, these are the only kinds of guys out there. Do those three beliefs make you feel good? No. If they don't make you feel good, that is proof that they are not true. That is proof that they are not true. That's like a rule that I go by. If I'm thinking a thought and it's making me feel anxious or not good, then it's clearly my soul saying, no, this is not for us. That thought is not our truth. So give yourself that test, figure out what it is that you're making it mean about yourself, your life, and your future, and then find out the misaligned thoughts that you're having. And then we work with, like, remember what those other archetypes were teaching. If there's misalignment, it's an energy leak, not the divine feminine. If there's misalignment, you're not in integrity. You're not in that queen energy of just absolute refinement. So the divine feminine wisdom, to get back to like what distinguishes this work from other work, is a very specific fine-tuned frequency. It is very high frequency. And if you choose that path, you will be required to go through a lot of clearing and alchemy and purifying, and it is so sacred and so beautiful, and it's possible.
Share the next steps with the ladies about how they can start to access some of this understanding and connect into these archetypes.
So I have a free quiz, and it's the Feminine Archetypes quiz, and we go through this quiz and the questions, and it will show you what your sun archetype is. Well, I actually prefer that you figure that out in advance, but it's pretty accurate as to what of those 6 archetypes you're really connected to. And it'll also show you, like, it doesn't even show up on the page, the one that you're like least connected to. So it gives you a little bit of a marker if you're feeling like you don't really know where to start. I would just take that free quiz. It takes like 5 minutes or less. And there's a really in-depth description of each of the archetypes also at the end if you want to learn more about them. The next step, if you're really, really committed to diving into the archetypes, is to do the feminine activation trainings. And that's a series of 3, level 1, 2, and 3.
We have all of your contact details, social media links, and everything directly below the video today. Where is the best place to sort of connect with you online, be part of your community?
I'm also on YouTube. I'd love for you to follow me there. I have a ton of trainings there, and that's really fun. Just search Anya Grace on YouTube and it should come up. If you want to just contact me directly, the best way is email, info@elevatedwomantraining.com.
Thank you, my love. I so appreciate you sharing this really potent, beautiful wisdom with us. And there's so many applications, obviously not just relationships, just really in evolving and becoming all that we're meant to be, which is just the topic of many, many other conversations, I know. Are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave our ladies with before we finish up today?
Just that I think you're amazing. And I know we've been in this field for a long time together. And so I really respect your work. And I think you're an incredible coach. And I know that your clients just make a lot of changes in their lives. And I love to support you as well. So thanks for inviting me onto this.
Thank you. That's so beautiful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will see you all again tomorrow for another beautiful, beautiful deep talk on the Love Breakthrough Virtual Retreat.